Welcome back to The Bottom Line. I am joined by coffee drinking Justin LoFranco. How's it
Espresso
going?
drinking.
Espresso drinking. I'm
Justin
cold brew
LoFranco.
drinking myself.
That's a beautiful Yeti tumbler you have there.
Thank you very much.
Mine is a Starbucks espresso cup from Spain on one of my various trips abroad.
Remember international travel?
Yeah, I do.
The days before COVID when we were all running around the globe chasing fast fitnessing together. That was fun.
I have a lot of mileage credit that's expiring in a few months, and I'm not looking forward to the $1,100 worth of unused mileage credit that might go to waste. So
no.
Bali, anyone?
I'm there. Let's go.
Let's do it.
I certainly hope that the world calms down enough to sort of like resume international travel. And it's so funny because that's actually what this episode of The Bottom Line is going to be about. Unplanned segue.
Very nice.
But, looking ahead at the fact that the Games is about to kick off with this online phase, and then we're going to bring the top 5 men and women to an in-person competition a few weeks later on. I was sort of thinking the other day, like, what happens if some or all or any of those competitors have to travel from quite far away, have to travel internationally, given the fact that the world is on fire, especially California, literally and metaphorically at this point. And international travel, any travel really, is still so up in the air.
Complicated.
Like, what happens? Yeah.
So little known story before the game switched to its 2-part online and in-person format is that athletes were actually advised by CrossFit HQ that they were going to get an exemption to travel as a professional athlete. Now there's a professional athlete exemption that does exist for professional athletes out there right now, as in, you can be deemed an essential travel, essentially, if you're from a restricted area. And so, Rosa, sort of new CEO and owner of CrossFit, kind of had been working on behind the scenes and uses vast content network to get somebody in Senate, I believe it was the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, to sort of make a contact over to Department of Homeland Security, which is ones who would, who regulate this sort of issue about getting. Yeah. Well, it
has to be.
It has to be. So, and that athletes, especially European-based athletes, were advised. And I spoke to one of the coaches who was like, "Yeah, we've gotten the green light, and athlete is going to be able to travel under his professional exemption." And then they sort of announced a change and went into a different direction for whatever reason. So I suspect that they'll be able to do something like that in the future, if that were to happen, where one or more athletes, and there's certainly a very good chance that one or more athletes is residing outside of the United States. So certainly there's a couple athletes that are, foreign nationals that are inside the United States, notably Catherine David-Sauter and Tia-Clair Toomey.
Sure.
And so they wouldn't have any issues if they were to be in the top 5 and qualify. But for all the other athletes abroad, Roman, all the way in St. Petersburg, Russia, and Eastern Europe, and as well as the UK and Australia. So you've got a mix of athletes that have a very strong potential to make it the top 5. So that's my guess.
And obviously we have to see what happens with the world in the next few weeks. I mean, something drastic could happen tomorrow when everything shuts down, or something goes really great and all of a sudden we can all go anywhere again. Like, we just don't know, probably not the latter, but we just don't know what's going to happen. But I'm wondering if, like, the process of doing all of these very official steps in order to make sure that people have this exemption, I wonder if that has something to do with the timing between phase 1 and the in-person gathering.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what if they need, a couple of things up for consideration. Number one, if you need an athlete to quarantine, if an athlete's coming from an area where it's going to be required for them to quarantine for a week or 2 weeks, you can't have the games 2 weeks later. It's just not, It's just completely ridiculous. So if you give them a week to recover and then you're like, okay, now we're only 3 weeks till the games, and then we need you to travel here.
Right.
Still quarantine. A month is like not a lot of time.
Right.
And then obviously the games team needs to transition into now creating the games experience that they have there. And it's going to be a relatively private affair from everything that I'm hearing. I mean, number one, you only have 10 athletes. So, I mean, you're talking a fairly bare bones, if at all, the coach or next, direct support system, if whatever it is, one person, perhaps most, would be allowed from each athlete, on the premises. And then they're just going to create a bubble. And this is going to be 3-4 days, I suppose, of competition and stuff. And so I think, honestly, doing it in less than a month, I think, is a lot of logistical challenges. Like I said, if they are going to go the route of getting a professional exemption, they're going to need a little bit of time to kind of get that paperwork issued. And yeah, I mean, the government can work quick at times.
Sometimes I hear,
but that, they need to allot themselves enough time while not making it too far out in advance. So I think a month makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I do think that also there have been some learnings recently that we've seen from a couple of the other competitions that have happened to manage to go off. We saw the Masters competition, and more recently the Elite Teen Throwdown, figuring out how to bring people in from other countries, figuring out how to deal with even more athletes, than will be the top 10, and figuring out exactly what their safety protocols are, how many people can be on site at a time, how do you shuttle people in and out, all of that I think those learnings will have been used by the time we get
10
to
athletes. I don't
here.
think they're going to have a problem logistically executing and coordinating 10 athletes, and the 10 athletes travel. Even if 5 of them are from overseas, I don't think that's an insurmountable lift for the games team, and I think that they're capable of handling that. I think that sort of there's been an easing a little bit in some of the travel limitations. Generally speaking, people are recognizing there's a relative risk to traveling, and so I suspect that to ensure the integrity of the bubble at the games, at the ranch or wherever they end up hosting the games, is that they'll probably have athletes coming out like at least a week in advance. And if you're going out, you're probably going to want to be there a week in advance anyways to get used to the time zone, to new climate or temperature, if depending on where you're coming from. So they're going to want to have a number of tests that are done on each athlete to ensure that everybody's safe and that nobody's viral, essentially. And so I think we've seen a lot of these comments for like, what happens. I think they're going to be fine, personally. I really do.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, but are we going to see a couple international athletes in the top 5? And if so, which ones?
Well, let me look. I haven't offered up any predictions. I've been letting Tommy sort of be the analytical mind that he is, coming up with these. Let me look at the leaderboard here and see.
Take a look, because it's so hard. Every time I think I have a top 5 in my mind, I'm like, ugh, what about this person? Ugh, what about that person? And like, you just, the field is so deep. The field for the wacky season that it was, given the fact that we didn't go through the qualification process that we wanted to or thought we were going to going into this, the field is so deep to come up with a top 5.
I'll throw a couple names out there. I think that have, that we could see on the international front. The first one that comes to mind is Vellner.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Vellner. And he's North America, but there's actually been quite a bit of issues traveling between the border for a while. So let's just, but whatever. He's still international.
I always forget that, because he could drive in if he wanted to. So to me, I always forget that that's like an international border.
He's international, and this still applies here. Vellner, BKG, Björgen Carl Goodmanson, an absolute savage right now. He looks really tough. He did very good at Rogue. That's another name that I think on the international side that wouldn't shock me, to say the least. Let's go to the women, because the women's a really international affair.
I know. My God.
I gotta be honest. She bear herself, Carl Saunders is.
I think so too. She's
just such a tough lady. Like, she's such a tough competitor. Her mindset is super strong. She proved, that she went through the test of the Rogue Invitational. And did this in a sort of an odd time zone too, and performed extremely well. And she won the Australian CrossFit Championship. She qualified through the Open, 10 months ago. I like her a lot. I think she's such a veteran. It's so ironclad mentally and physically that I see this being a very good. I put my chances on Carl Saunders very high. Sarah Sigmundsdottir, same thing goes, man.
Totally.
give this girl an
Totally.
online competition, and it's just going to wreck face. And so I could see that happening. Holta,
So strong, such a strong, consistent competitor.
consistent. She's great in online formats. I suspect this will be a different format, but she has done very, very well recently in rehabilitating an injury.
Yep.
And she looks like she is near or at or exceeding 100%. She set at least 2 PRs. I can see she set a clean PR of 231 pounds. She set a back squat PR. And I think she might have set a snatch PR like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so the clean and the snatch are wrist intensive movements. And so, obviously feeling comfortable enough to push that, and clearly hasn't lost any of the strength since kind of being in rehab a little, well, rehab or just building that muscle back and the comfortability back. She was doing backflips, for crying out loud, like a month ago, lots of them, and handstand push-ups and handstand walking. So I don't know. She feels like she's really at near or exceeding 100% capacity of where she's at, and she's second fittest woman on earth. So that's another foreign athlete who's going to be traveling from afar. Looking at the list here, I don't know. I think for international wise, I'm gonna hold off from there.
Okay.
So there's 5 athletes that have to travel.
There are a lot of options, and even more down the list. And just anything could happen with the weird online format. We've never seen this kind of thing before. So don't throw any other flyers or dark horse possibilities out yet. I mean, there are plenty of chances of people to sneak through.
Yeah. Well, we don't know how many workouts. We don't know the scoring format. We don't know. Also know how everybody is feeling and where they are in their training. So it's a little bit unknown. I mean, I assume everybody's stupid fit and working their butts off. I think that's kind of, a given. But has anybody had any kind of ailments or injuries or something like that that's kind of flown under the radar, just because all we are is observing and watching these athletes remotely? So some of these athletes could be hindered from that, or perhaps they haven't had great training opportunities. A lot of these athletes don't have like their own gyms, and any of the US based ones might have kind of suffered a little bit more from a lack of access if gyms have been closed or something like that. I'm kind of speculating a little bit here. Some of the unknowns that go into this is we just don't know where everybody's at exactly. But
we'll know soon enough. It's right around the corner.
The list is deep. There's some heavy hitters here.
Yeah.
It's too bad we won't be able to watch this play out in real time. But it is what it is. I do think that CrossFit is putting together some kind of recap video afterwards. I know they have video crews across a lot of these locations where athletes are going to be competing. So I think the fans are still going to get to see some cool moments and some cool highlights there, some made for TV moments and stuff. So sure. I hear that's sort of in the works or under consideration. So hopefully that gets out. And some way of hyping up for I imagine if a week out from the stage 2, we might see something like that. It wouldn't shock me.
That would be awesome. I feel like that's what we've all been missing. Like we've all been missing like the ability to watch our favorite athletes just absolutely crush. And that is part of the sports drought. Yeah. And it's part of the motivation that honestly keeps me going every day in the gym on my own. Just like seeing that is inspirational, and seeing that gets me fired up to go and do my squats that are 1/20th the weight.
I am squatting near 90% of what some CrossFit female games athletes are squatting.
Ooh, that's actually very impressive. Nice work. Well, thanks, Justin. Thanks for joining us on The Bottom Line. We are excited to see how the rest of the season plays out, and it is very, very close to kicking off. So we will see you guys next time.